Good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Weisberg. I am the CEO of the Federation for Jewish Philanthropy of Upper Fairfield County here in Connecticut, where I believe it might be just starting to snow outside. And I want to welcome you to this really exciting webinar as we get prepared this week to celebrate Tu B'Shvat. I'm so delighted that we have participants joining us not only from around the country, but from around the world. We had, I think, over 470 people register for this webinar from places as far away as Brazil and South Africa and Israel. And much of that is thanks to the fact that we had 35 wonderful partners who I'm not going to name all of them, but I want to share all of them on the screen with you right now and thank them for their partnership in helping to invite you to share this wonderful webinar with us today. For me, growing up, Tu B'Shvat was typified by being that time in Hebrew school that they gave us a bag of fruits from Israel, many things that I've never tasted before, some things that I still didn't want to taste when I got them. But those fruits for me, which included dates, really embodied that thing that we were taught about Israel in the Torah, that Israel is a land flowing with milk and honey. The Torah is a great tourism slogan for the land of Israel. And for me, the notion of Israel as a land flowing with milk and honey, it was something that I could understand. I'd had milk before. Milk is nourishing and fulfilling. And where does milk come from? Well, cows, I thought, although in the case of the Torah, it was referring to goat's milk. And honey was something I understood. It's sweet. And where does honey come from? Well, I knew it came from bees, but in the case of the Torah, the honey that they were talking about was the honey that you could extract if you squeezed the native Judean date. And in fact, none of us, or very few of us, know what that honey tastes like, what that honey from the native Judean date tastes like. And how do I know that? Because the native Judean date is a species that's been extinct for 2,000 years. And so while there's many date palms in Israel, they're not species that are native to Israel. And so if I had asked, raise your hand if you've tasted a native Judean date before, and many of you might have raised your hands, I could say, well, you're not telling the truth because you didn't really know. And so it would be logical to say that nobody has ever tasted a native Judean date, and nobody would ever taste a native Judean date and its honey unless there was some kind of miraculous Jurassic Park type of story. And the reason that we're having this webinar today is that there is, in fact, a miraculous Jurassic Park type of story that we want to share with you. And what makes it particularly interesting is that this miracle that took place in Israel actually took place in a place that is itself a miracle. The Arava Institute, a place that I've been associated with because I was the director of Friends of the Arava Institute from 2007 to 2011. Now in its 25th year, the Arava Institute was a crazy, brilliant idea of Dr. Elaine, one of the founders of the Israeli environmental movement, who said, the people of the Middle East have a lot of things that make them different, a lot of things that they tend to disagree about and sometimes fight about, different religion, different culture, different historical narratives, different politics. They have one thing that they share in common, and they have absolutely no choice about that. They share the same environment, they share the same environmental problems, and they can't solve them if they don't figure out a way to work together. Air pollution, water pollution doesn't stop at the border and have to show a passport and a visa to get across. Everyone shares the same problems and they can't solve them if they don't work together. And Dr. Tal said, you know what, maybe this is a platform to bring young people together, Israeli Jews, Arabs from Israel and from Palestine and from Jordan, and other students as well, and use this as a platform not only to begin to address environmental problems, but to begin to develop the relationships that can lead to peace as well. And so I'd like to share with you a wonderful short video that will help you see, personify this dream of the Arava Institute. And then we'll bring on my friends, David Lehrer and Dr. Elaine Solowey, to learn a little bit more about the Institute and to hear the miraculous story of the native Judaean date palm.
Water, air, energy, and land are shared environmental resources in the Middle East. As the conflict between Palestinians and Israelis persists, cross-border environmental problems will continue to plague the region and significantly increase tension. Only through cross-border cooperation can we manage our shared resources sustainably. To do this, first we must learn to trust each other.
Some people might say that water is the scarcest resource in the Middle East, but the truth is that the scarcest resource here is trust.
The problems are growing, the problems are increasing because we do not trust each other. We do not know each other. And the Arava Institute allows or helps these students to know each other first, then to build the trust.
Located on Kibbutz Keturah in southern Israel, the Arava Institute for Environmental Studies is an academic and research center. Its mission is to advance cross-border environmental cooperation in the face of political conflict.
The Arava Institute brings together Israelis, Palestinians, Jordanians, international students through our cross-border academic programs, research centers, alumni initiatives, conferences, and internships. We work together to tackle issues in the Middle East, such as climate change, water scarcity, sustainable agriculture, and renewable energy.
It actually uses the environment as the glue or the foundation that people can discuss in order to overcome whatever is happening in the Middle East and to bring them together.
Over the years, approximately 1,000 alumni from Israel, Jordan, Palestine, and around the world have studied, interned, and lived together while engaging in one of the most open, honest, and difficult dialogues about the future of the Middle East. Our students go on to engage in solving some of the most pressing environmental and social challenges of the region.
Nature does not know any border, and therefore cooperation is essential when we talk about environmental issues.
And we should, in somehow, I know it's very difficult to overcome our political dispute, so in order to try to solve the environmental problems. And I think at the end, that's what's really connects us all as human beings. We're part of nature, and nature is part of us. So that's why we should cooperate relentlessly trying to solve the environmental problems.
We can go from being a baby to an old man without never having the chance to be exposed to something different. And the Arava Institute is breaking that cycle. It's offering a window to the MENA region. It's offering a window to our neighbor. And without those initiatives, there's no future for the region.
To me, the Arava Institute is a beacon of hope in the future of the Middle East. When I sit with our students and I sort of take a step back and look around at the group, I often find myself with goosebumps just at how amazing it is what we're doing, and that so few places are bringing people together to build community and to say that there's another way, that there can be a peaceful solution here.
What a wonderful video of a very powerful story. And now delighted to welcome two of my old friends and colleagues from the Arava Institute, David Lehrer, who is a native of North Carolina, but who I only learned very recently was bar mitzvahed in Fairfield, Connecticut. He has been the executive director of the Arava Institute for 20 of its 25 years. Welcome, David, and the director of the Center for Sustainable Agriculture at the Arava Institute, the wonderful Dr. Elaine Solowey. David and Elaine, welcome. It's so great to have you here on this week of Tu B'Shvat.
Well, thank you, David. It's a pleasure being here. It's great to see you again. David and I are old friends, David and David. We are celebrating Tu B'Shvat here on Kibbutz Torah by zooming in with all of you wonderful people from across the United States, from Jewish federations all over, including the federation from Oklahoma, where my wife is from, and of course the federation in Connecticut, where we also have family in Fairfield. The Arava Institute was founded, as David said, 25 years ago, because we believe that the environment can't wait for peace between Israelis and Palestinians, and because we believe that by working together on environmental issues, which are mutual issues for everybody in the region, we are building the foundation for peace and understanding and building relationships between people in conflict. So the Arava Institute was founded by Dr. Alon Tal and Miriam Sharton, who are two members of the kibbutz, in order to teach that nature knows no borders. We bring Jews and Arabs together, Israelis, Palestinians, Jordanians, international students, to an academic program that is in partnership with Ben Gurion University of the Negev. We teach courses, academic courses in environmental studies, in ecology, earth sciences, renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, environmental policy, religion and the environment, all the tools that students need to become leaders and professionals in their home communities. The Institute offers 2 semesters of studies, not a full degree, and students who come and study here are able to go back to their home universities if they come from another university with a transcript from Ben Gurion University. The program is in English, and we try and reach a balance of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. We have about 50 to 60 students every semester. 1/3 are Israelis, 1/3 are Palestinians and Jordanians, and 1/3 are international students. In addition to the academic studies, we have 4 centers of research. Our Center for Transboundary Water Management, which is headed by Dr. Clive Lipchin, and we work together with Palestinian and Jordanian research colleagues in order to make sure that there's enough water for everybody in the region, that the water is clean and drinkable, and that there's enough water for nature. Our Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Conservation, headed by Dr. Tariq Abu Hamid, Palestinian from East Jerusalem, who came down to the Arava in order to help to develop one of Israel's most abundant resources, solar radiation, energy from the sun. Our Center for Arid Land Conservation, headed by Dr. Miri Levi-Neiman, which works on the issues of human interaction, human settlement and human interaction with the natural environment of arid regions like the Negev and the Arava. And then of course, there's our Center for Sustainable Agriculture, which is headed by Dr. Elaine Solowey, who will be speaking in a moment about one of the most incredible projects which she has headed, the Ancient Date Seed Project. But before that, I just want to say that I think that in some ways it is a bit of a miracle what we're able to do here at the Arava Institute. You know, when we founded the program 25 years ago, when Alon and Miriam founded the program, we thought, well, we bring a bunch of Jews and Arabs together, we'll throw them in a room, we'll teach them about the environment, and we will, and you know, everything will let them talk about all the other stuff somewhere else. We learned very quickly that it doesn't work that way. That students could study together and live together without really talking about what they had, what was in their hearts. And so very early on, we created a program that continues today called the Peace Building Leadership Seminar, which is a once a week not-for-credit program where we talk about what they don't want to talk about. So we talk about history, politics, religion, war, occupation, terrorism, all the things that bring up the emotions. And you know, this is the Middle East, so these sessions are often not very quiet, and they end with sometimes with the students screaming and yelling at each other and stomping out the door. But what makes the Arava Institute unique is the fact that we are located here on Kibbutz Keturah, which is in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere. So they have no place to go except back to the same dormitories where they're living, Jews and Arabs, sharing tea, sharing coffee, sharing computers, sharing space. And many times the students will say to us, hey, I didn't sign up for this. I came here to study environment, but we tell them that, listen, you really can't learn how to live in peace with nature until you've learned how to live in peace with your neighbor. Most students tell us at the end of the program that the Peace Building Leadership Seminar was the most important thing that they did when they were here at the Arava Institute. And it's where they build the strong bonds of friendship and cooperation that last long after they've been to the Institute. And because of that, we've created a framework, the Arava Alumni Peace and Environmental Network, our alumni network, where alumni get together and continue to meet through conferences, programs, cross-border projects, continuing to advance the belief that nature knows no borders. As I said, one of the more incredible things that Dr. Elaine Solowey's Center for Sustainable Agriculture has done has been to sprout a 2,000-year-old date seed. And I'm going to share with you just a few pictures so you'll get the idea of what it looks like for those who have not seen Methuselah. Great. Okay, David, do you see the slideshow?
I do. I see the slideshow and your yeah, the next slide as well.
Oh, okay.
But that's okay.
It's okay. All right. I'm never sure how this works. So apparently I don't know how to do it right. But in any case, you can see Methuselah. This is and Elaine, you jump in if I get anything wrong here. So this is the first attempts, I think, to sprout a date seed from an archaeological dig that was carbon dated about, what was the first one?
Carbon dated between 35 AD and 65 AD.
Right, and here we see it just after, how many months is this? How many?
This was after 3 or 4 months, actually.
Yeah, and this is already in 2006, and we were replanting it into a bigger pot. And now you see it in its new home. We created a special little garden for Methuselah.
2011.
12, it says 2011, 2012.
Yes.
Yep. Here already we see the tree in 2016. And here we see the latest additions to the ancient date seed project. 3 more date trees which were planted in 2019, Jonah, Hannah, and Jeremiah. And here you can see, I think this is a picture from this year, and this is a picture, the tree up close is, this is Hannah. This is the one that gave birth to 100 baby Hannahs this summer. And here we see the first harvest in 2,000 years of the ancient Judean date. Okay, so I'm going to get out of this. Okay, somehow we've lost the, that's not good. Hold on a second.
You're still on, David.
Yeah, but it's oh, I guess it doesn't matter. Okay, you have to look at the blank screen. I don't know. You have to look at the blank screen, Elaine. Okay, so I've known Dr. Elaine Solowey now since I've been living on Kibbutz Keturah, which is over 40 years. I came here in 1978. Elaine was already here. Elaine was at the time planting the first date trees of Kibbutz Keturah, which is now one of the major branches of the kibbutz. We have two types of dates, Majul and Dekel. No, I don't think we already have no more Dekel Nor, but we have Majul, which is our one section of Dekel Nor. Majul originally, I think, from California. Those trees came
originally from California, but before that, they were from Morocco.
Yeah. And Elaine has been working in agriculture on the kibbutz for many, many years, and began doing research on her own, and then together with Ben Gurion University in the 90s, and then when Alon founded the Arava Institute here at Kibbutz Keturah, Dr. Solowey was invited to be one of its founding faculty, has been teaching at the Institute ever since. So I would like to introduce you to the mother of Methuselah, Dr. Elaine Solowey.
Hello, Elaine. And Elaine, I want to ask if you can move just a little bit closer to the screen and the microphone. I want to make sure everybody is able to hear you. And before I start asking you questions, I want to make a mention of questions in general, because I already see the chat and the Q&A being overloaded with questions. So many people have questions that they want to ask. So I want to just make a note about, we're going to try to leave 15 to 20 minutes for questions. There are indeed three ways you can ask. One is to type into the chat. One is to type into the Q&A. What's also fun is if you raise your virtual hand, we can actually bring you live onto the broadcast with us, which means if your camera is going to turn on, if your camera is turned on, you're going to be on the screen as well. So just a heads up in case you're not in a condition that you want people around the world to be seeing you on Zoom. That's what will happen if we bring you on screen. Elaine, Dr. Solowey, so delighted to be able to spend some time with you. My first question for you is how do you get your hands on 2,000-year-old seeds? How do they find you? And do you have any idea what they are once they're given to you?
Well, actually, the seeds were acquired by Dr. Sarah Salon. She went to Bar Ilan and got them out of the collection. If I had asked, I'm sure they would have said to me, oh, maybe. And that would have been the end of it. But she went back and she went back, and they finally gave her some seeds. So she brought them to me and she said, here, these seeds are from Masada. See if you can sprout them. And I said, what? They're from Masada, they're 2,000 years old, and you want me to sprout them? She said, yes. She had read about them, about a seed in California, 1,200 years old, from an extinct bed, extinct lake bed in Thailand that sprouted in California. And we decided that, well, if they can do it in California, why can't we do it here? Took me a while to figure out a protocol, but I got a protocol finally together. I put the seeds in a bottle warmer to rehydrate them gently. I began to treat them with different kinds of materials, such as gibberellic acid. And I planted them totally with new equipment, new irrigation, new potting soil, new everything, so there'd be no contamination. I locked them up in the quarantine site. I checked them once a day and I forgot about them, more or less, because I wasn't expecting anything to happen. But it did happen. It happened very quickly, actually. I planted them in January 22nd, 2005, and on March 18th, Methuselah started to come up. I was totally amazed. One of the things that was interesting about Methuselah is he was so pale. I figured that might have been problems with salt. I put him immediately on desalinated water because I had been irrigating everything with our saline water here, which makes things a little difficult for certain plants. And he immediately started to look good. And then I told Sarah that one of the seeds had come up, and she was so excited. I couldn't figure out why she was so excited, or why we ended up on television, or why we ended up in Time magazine, the plucky pit, they call us. I didn't realize exactly what had happened and how significant it was.
Did you know what the seed was?
Oh, yes.
It was given
yes.
to you.
Well, yeah. Date seeds are
Pretty
very
distinctive.
they're distinct. They're large. They have they're separated into two pieces. They're very distinct. You can't mistake a date seed for anything but one.
Mm-hmm. And because of where it came from, it was your suspicion that it had to be a native Judean date palm.
Well, we were not entirely sure, but when we radiocarbon dated the remnants, the seed, well, when a date seed sprouts, like a little umbilical cord comes out of it and the tree grows on the end of that. So the seed coat survives more or less. When we had it dated, we realized, yes, we really did have an extinct Asian tree.
And when it came to your developing the protocol to try to get these seeds to germinate, was there something in your training that you go back to, or is it your imagination, or is it protocols from these seeds that were germinated in, I think, Thailand that you mentioned? How do you figure that out?
I really did not know. You might say, I guess, luckily, I knew that I had to hydrate them slowly. I knew that I had to give them a chance to absorb the water. I think that was the most important part. But I have never managed to sprout an ancient seed from anywhere but the area of the Dead Sea. I think there's something special about that extra 300 meters of atmosphere or something that has something to do with keeping these seeds alive for that long.
Right. Yeah, I think I had heard you say, and it had to be years ago, that you didn't bring something back from the dead, but what a seed really is a container with something alive inside of it.
Yes.
And
yes.
it was just there waiting.
Yes. I couldn't have done it if the seed wasn't alive. I also was given seeds from the area that were dead as doornails, and I couldn't do anything with them. Olives and wheat and lupin and many others, but they apparently were not able to survive. Either that or the embryos weren't strong enough to break the seed coat. That's also a possibility. I didn't see any life in those seeds.
Right. And so there's something special about these that keeps them alive in some kind of suspended animation for 2,000 years?
Well, they were protected. They were in an archaeological dig. They were in a cave.
They were in a jungle.
Yeah, and the Methuselah and Adam, we actually called him Eve to begin because we were hoping he was a girl, but he turned out to be an Adam. They were in a sort of a pitcher, and I assume that they were protected from moisture and bugs and just about everything. They were 39 layers down into the dig. I'm pretty sure that this accidental sort of situation, I really do believe that it led to these seeds still being alive.
So how long would it take for a typical date palm to bear fruit from the time that you planted a seed?
Oh, well, I would say a minimum of 5 or 6 years from a seed. Now, an offshoot would be different. An offshoot, of course, is already taken large off of the mother or father plant. And yeah, they usually bear within two years of being planted. But starting from a seed, it takes 5 or 6 years.
And so from the time you got Methuselah to sprout, you had to wait 5 or 6 years to find out whether it was a male tree or a female. As I used to say, you can't just pick up one of the branches and look underneath and figure that out.
It doesn't work like that. You have to wait till they flower. And he flowered, and we realized we had a boy. So
what do you do? What do you do when you find out it's a boy? Are you crestfallen? And what are the next steps?
Well, we figured we needed more date seeds. So Dr. Solowey went to another archaeologist, a fellow by the name of Joseph Patrick, and he does a lot of work around the Dead Sea. And we got 36 more date seeds. And I began to treat them and plant them. And from that particular batch of seeds, I got 5 more little ones to come up. Well, okay, what does it mean? I see a question here. What does it mean that it was a boy? It was male. Date trees come male and female. And the flowers, of course, what about the flower told you that it was a boy? Okay, the flower of the male date tree is quite large, and it has a rounded top. And when it explodes, you can see there are lots of little flowers up and down the strands. The females look totally different. They also have strands, but other than they have little knots, which of course, when pollinated, turn into dates.
So at what point do you realize that you have a girl tree? When does this happen for the first time?
Well, you notice it when the spathe, which is the unopened flower, comes out. It's obvious. It's obvious it's a female flower.
At that point, are you confident that it's going to produce fruit?
No. I wasn't sure that. I wasn't sure about a lot of things with these ancient seeds. I wasn't sure that they would produce a flower. I have another tree which is from a 1,000-year-old seed. It's not a date, and it's 10 years old now, and it hasn't produced flowers. I have no explanation for this.
And so this first produced fruit when?
Okay, Hannah, that's the tree that we pollinated. She first produced fruit this September. And we got 111 absolutely beautiful dates from her that tasted like honey. That's the honey you were talking about.
And are they different? Did you say, well, this is something I've never seen or had before?
Well, they're semi-dry because in the old days, nobody had dessert dates because nobody had refrigeration, right? So you didn't want to have a dessert date. You wanted something that was semi-dry. They're big. They're about the size of jewels, which means they're 18, 20, 22 grams. They're kind of blonde, actually. And they're quite tasty. Like I said, they definitely have a honey flavor.
Mm-hmm. And now that you've gotten one to fruit and you have male and female, is the native Judean date palm back here to stay?
I hope so.
It can be fruitful and multiply.
Yes, we're going to see whether we can make a genetic line from Hannah.
It's amazing. So what I want to do is I want to show that wonderful video of the first day of the date harvest, and then we'll open up for questions, because I know we have just plenty of them.
Today is a historic day in which we celebrate the harvest of the first fruit of Hannah, an ancient date tree sprouted from an ancient date seed. This is the result of many years of scientific research at the Arava Institute by Dr. Elaine Solowey.
Here we are with Hannah. She is the female tree that we pollinated from Methuselah's pollen. And she bore us 111 really nice dates with a caramel honey aftertaste. We had a bit of a ceremony in which we cut the dates ceremoniously. Later on, my husband Michael said Shechianu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri ha'etz. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Amen.
And we ceremoniously tasted them.
It really is a symbol of the miracle that we try to perform here at the Arava Institute, bringing people from the Middle East together in order to plant a seed of peace, which we hope will someday sprout into a tree of peace and friendship.
Good line now, come on.
Beautiful. So I'm amazed, continue to be amazed by the story. We're going to open this up for questions. I know there are plenty of them. Once again, if you have a question and you raise your virtual hand, as I see a couple of folks have done, I'll be able to invite you in live to ask your question. And I'm sure that we will not get to everyone's questions. So I apologize about that. I'm going to pick out Paul's question here. And Paul said, did you have any trepidations about bringing back an extinct species into modern times? Was there anything that worried you about?
Jurassic Park.
No, I wasn't worried.
You were going to get eaten by the date tree.
A date tree stays where you put it. It does what you want it to do. And like I said, it's not mobile. I didn't think I was in danger at all. So, there could have been problems. We kept the date in quarantine for quite a while because we were worried that maybe it was more vulnerable to the modern diseases, but it's turned out to be quite a tough tree.
Great. So I am bringing Paul onto the screen with us, I hope. While we wait for Paul, Ria is asking, so was Hannah pollinated by Methuselah?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, let me see if I can move somebody else on to panelist in case Paul isn't joining us. We're waiting for Neil to hopefully join us. There's Neil.
Yeah, here I am. Sorry, my corporate logo behind me. I can do better than that. But the question was,
Neil, where are you
So free plug. That's fine as long as Moody's sends a big check to David, then that's fine.
I've got better virtual backgrounds, but I'm calling from New York City, and it's a pleasure to join you. I've actually seen Methuselah at the Arava Institute. I was on the Israel ride in our last functioning ride year. Before we had to hang it up last year. So I'll go to a somewhat more suitable background for the moment. And the question was going to be, having re-entered the environment after 2,000 years, are the Judean date palms exceptionally susceptible to any pests, viruses, environmental threats that it would not have had to face evolutionarily for all this time?
Really don't think so. I actually think that these trees are probably tougher than our modern ones. There was no such thing as pesticides. Nobody went around with a spray gun in the old days. I think that the tree is particularly specific. It's particularly good for this area. I really do not think that it's going to viruses and die or anything like that. I think it's quite a tough tree.
Great. Neil, thanks so much for your question, Neil. So I have a question from Martin that was emailed to me. He says the contemporary date palm genome has been sequenced. Has the Judaean date palm genome been sequenced? And if so, can that tell us anything about the evolution of the plant?
Actually, this is something that Dr. Salone really investigated. He thought that according to the dates that came up in their genomes, that perhaps the two main species of dates, the North African ones and the Gulf ones, had gotten together in Israel. simply because it looked like we had representatives from both of the streams of dates. The Science Advances article has that, and also a phyllogic tree, which I think is very interesting, which shows you where the dates that we have are as far as the relationship to other dates.
So Deborah writes, why do you think the Judaean date palm became extinct in the first place? And can you avoid that happening again with Methuselah and Hannah and their offspring?
The Judean date.
You could come a little closer. A little closer.
The Judean date became extinct because the Romans did their best to break the back of Judea, and this was probably the main export crop. Actually, the Romans, who had absolutely nothing nice to say about Israel, really, really liked the dates, but that didn't keep their soldiers from destroying most of them. Dates need people to take care of them. When most of the Judeans were exiled, you might say that the last cultivated dates died along with the rest of the country.
Right. So it's interesting. These questions vary between the just the curious and the very esoteric, and I'll try to bounce back in between them. Here's one of the more esoteric, I think. Are there plans to conduct further phenotyping experiments on the revived genotypes, for example, to test for disease, pest, drought resistance? Is clonal propagation a possibility? I don't even know what that question means, but hopefully you do.
I actually do. Yes, we do plan to continue to work on phenotyping, and we also plan to do some clonal production. We do have offshoots from Hannah already, but not enough, not as many as we need to make an orchard of her phenotype.
So Harvey asks, why do dates need people in order to survive?
Oh, well, they didn't have the kind of advantages we have now as far as reproduction. If you want to reproduce a date traditionally, you have to take the offshoots off of them and plant them separately. Otherwise, eventually the tree gets covered by offshoots, which take its strength away from it. Yes, they need to be taken care of. Also in this area, they also need to be watered. So yeah, they're not something that, a cultivated date is not something that just can grow by itself.
So welcome, Harvey. Harvey, where are you joining us from? And I need to ask you to unmute.
I'm in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Well, welcome, Harvey.
And
what's your question?
I also had the question about exposure to disease that might not be survivable, because those kinds of questions have come up you use the term Jurassic Park phenomenon in your marketing of this webinar. And when people consider bringing mastodons back to life at genetic centers at Harvard and elsewhere, one of the concerns is, yeah, they might be able to do that, but they have no idea what preparation a mastodon would have against various viruses and bacteria that would be around today that they wouldn't be able to cope with. And it seems like a realistic question. I also asked in my email a few days ago, when can I taste one of these dates?
There we go. So thank you, Harvey, for your question.
I really do believe after quarantining our tree from 2005 until 2011, that we did figure out that it's actually rather disease resistant. The way it developed, the fact that nobody was spraying, nobody was protecting, nobody knew that what kind of diseases there were. I really think that the date has developed to be resistant, to develop to be strong.
So
As far as the mastodons go, I have absolutely no idea of what you're talking about.
Well, that's next year's story at the Arava Institute.
I'm afraid I've been too concentrated on the dates.
I will just add to the second question about when you will be able to taste one of the Judean dates. So we did put most of the dates that we harvested this summer. We are using for further scientific research, but we did put 10 dates aside, and they're in the freezer in Elaine's workshop, and we're holding them for a virtual gala event that the Friends of the Arava Institute will be hosting in April. During that event, it's our hope that we will be able to auction off 10 of those dates. So, if you're willing to make a bid, you might have a chance to taste one of the 10 Judean dates.
And before we welcome my old friend, Michael Marcus, there was a reference to the Israel ride from one of our earlier questioners. And David, we should mention that because for folks who want to get to Keturah and see the date trees there, that's one of the best ways to get there.
Yep. You just have to ride on a bike for 4 days, but it's our annual Israel ride is usually at the end of October, beginning of November every year. This year, of course, it was a virtual ride due to the pandemic, but we're all on track to have a real ride, a physical ride in 2021. And David's showing the website here. It's www.israelride.org, and on and it's a 5-day ride with a Shabbat in the middle. So the day after Shabbat on Sunday morning is the day we ride from Mitzpeh Ramon to Kibbutz Keturah, where you will be staying at the lovely Karen Kolod guest house, which is right opposite Methuselah, and you get to see Methuselah.
And now I'm delighted to welcome my old friend, as I understand, the new chair of the board of Friends of Arava Institute in Denver, Colorado, Michael Marcus. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, David. I think that I don't have to explain why I take such pride and pleasure in my involvement with the Arava Institute as board chair of the Friends of. This story you just heard about Methuselah and the dates is just one of many, many stories that are very, very inspiring about the Arava Institute. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to say it's very simple to get more information. Arava.org. arava.org is the web address, and you can go there and find out about more about the Institute, its programs, its students, etc. You can make a donation if you would like. We do get annual contributions from a couple of different Jewish federations around the country. And I would encourage all of you to go back to your home federation or the powers that be there and encourage them to consider the same kind of support. Thank you. And David, it's a pleasure. David Weisberg, pleasure to see you again.
Always. So, Elaine, we have a question from Claire in Florida who wants to know, can these date palms be grown other places in the world? For example, in Florida?
Oh, okay, well, Dates need a long dry season. They also need warmth. For instance, the date trees that live in Jerusalem, they survive, but most of the time they don't fruit. I would say probably they could grow in Florida. I'm not entirely sure about the fruiting because it rains a lot there. Still, it might be worth a try.
Great. So welcome, Leslie. Leslie, you'll need to unmute yourself, and we'd love to know where you're tuning in from today.
I'm tuning in from Noank, Connecticut.
All right. And Leslie,
and I'm really enjoying this because I'm a gardener. This is amazing.
Your question for Dr. Solowey?
Pardon?
Your question for Dr. Solowey?
I don't have a question. Somehow I just unmuted and came on accidentally.
Well, we're delighted to see you, and we're glad you're enjoying it. And
thank you.
Absolutely
exciting.
So Jill asks, is it possible to grow these plants in greenhouses so that they can be grown in more parts of the world?
Yes, I would say yes.
It's also one of the plans of the Institute together with Kibbutz Keturah is to develop the ancient date seed project, the Judean Date, as a commercial enterprise. So it'll take us a few years to do that, as Elaine explained, but little by little we're going to be perhaps through cloning and also through taking off sprouts, we're going to be planting out a commercial date field, and at that point we will start selling the dates commercially, and you will be able to buy dates in your local supermarket that are originally from a 2,000-year-old date seed.
So David, John Epstein has a question. And
where's John? Put him on. Put him. No,
he has not raised his hand, but he typed in a question.
Tell John, put yourself on the video. Let's see you. Come on.
He said, do you have any stories about how your students took the pride from this miracle back to their home communities to show how we can build a better world by working together through trust?
Well, I mean, we have over about 1,400 alumni throughout the world, and 80% of our alumni continue to be in contact with the Institute through social media, through conferences, programs. We have an annual conference here where we bring 100 to 150 alumni. They bring their spouses, they bring their children. It's a real community. And today our alumni are really spread throughout this region in Jordan, Palestine, and Israel, and are active in civil society, non-governmental organizations that are fighting for a more sustainable region and a more peaceful region. Many of our alumni went into academics and have now have gotten their doctorates and are now our colleagues. We have an alum from Bethlehem, a Palestinian alum who teaches here at the Arava Institute ecology. Others have gone into local governments or governments. We have a group of alumni in Jordan who we're now working on developing a kind of parallel campus in Jordan for the Arava Institute. Really, we're very proud of our alumni. Many of them have become our most important partners, and we hope to continue to see our alumni throughout the region having an impact and bringing the message of the Arava Institute that nature knows no borders.
Great. So a great question from Anne. Have you or Dr. Salan begun any research as to the medicinal or health benefits of these dates that might differ from those of the medjool dates?
Yes, well, Dr. Salone is a practicing doctor at Hadassah Hospital, and she mostly has looked into this, and it appears that this date is truly medicinal. And traditionally, this date was used for bowel problems as an aphrodisiac, for problems with blood. Of course, medicine was a lot more primitive in those days. And now they can test the date and find out exactly what it's good for. And we're in the process of doing that now.
So, David, a question from Neil. Are the new peace arrangements with the UAE creating cross-border cooperation opportunities for the Arava Institute?
Yeah, there's actually, I mean, in truth, the Arava Institute has been quietly engaged with Gulf state citizens for some time now. Through a framework we call the Young Professionals Forum. We created a framework which enabled Jordanians, Palestinians, Israelis, and people from the wider region, including Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, and the Gulf states, to engage online and to meet in conferences in places like Jordan and Cyprus. So in a sense, when the UAE agreements were first announced, the Institute was well poised to sort of take advantage of this warming of relationships. And fairly quickly, the Institute had sent one of our alum to the UAE. And we are now in this, we now have a research project. Dr. Abu Hamid has a partner in the UAE doing research. We are exploring the possibility of recruiting students from that region. And we're looking at a variety of different opportunities that are opening up for ourselves and for the region as a whole, which we believe should include the Palestinians and the Jordanians.
Great. Elaine, question from a couple of different viewers wanting to know if we know how the environment was different 2,000 years ago. Someone asked, was the rain different? Was the environment different in ways that were meaningful to the Judean date palms growing then?
It was colder. It was colder. The oaks used to grow all the way down to Ashkelon, for instance. If you remember the story of Absalom, his hair caught in an oak when he was riding away, and he was captured, and the soldier who knew that Absalom had David's son, right, had sort of spurred a palace revolution. He actually caught Absalom, whose hair was caught in the oak tree, and he killed him. Now, there's no oak tree anywhere close to Ashkelon now. The area was more forested, and I'm sure the south of Israel has not changed that much. And of course, the dates are a more southern sort of fruit, you might say.
Right.
They're grown here. They're grown all the way down to Eilat. They're grown the entire area from Eilat up to the Dead Sea now is almost full of date orchards at the bottom of the valley.
So one last question. If we were to have this webinar again, 5 years from now, yes, what's it your hope will be the story then?
Well, I really hope that we will have a commercial orchard of the dates, very much like Hannah. I also, we have another female who hasn't flowered yet, and we're expecting great things from her. Her name is Judith, and we're expecting her to flower maybe this spring. This will, of course, make the genetic pool that we have to work with a little bigger. And of course, I'm really hoping that Methuselah will be considered an excellent tree for pollination, and that we will be able to use this pollen to make lots of little date babies and little dates.
Well, thank you, Elaine. Thank you, David. This has been fascinating, wonderful, such a great way to celebrate the week of Tu B'Shvat. Once again, I want to thank our many, many partners who contributed to our having close to 500 people sign up for this webinar today, and many of them actually tune in and participate. It's just been a really wonderful program, and thank you for the work that you are doing, both to bring the native Judean date palm back to life, and I know so many of us yearn to be able to taste that honey soon, and for the work that you're doing to bring people together at the Arava Institute and to promote coexistence and a safer planet, because I know that that's a sweet honey that we all hope to taste soon as well. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for everyone tuning in today. Have David and Elaine have a good night and a joyous and sweet and nourishing Tu B'Shvat to everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chag Sameach to everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.